You hear the response, or I need to repeat it?
We lost you.
Maybe repeat it, but give me 1 second to start us up.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the TrueLife podcast. We are here with a couple of gentlemen from a new company called Entheogen Biotech, Mr. Anthony Bailey and Dr. Vangelis Mitsis. They have gone and found out some pretty amazing things in the world of creating psychedelics, but more importantly, entheogens, and the idea of a library of multiple strains. And it's going to be an exciting conversation. So as we get started, let me just take a moment to introduce Anthony. Can you tell the people a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Anthony Bailey. I think it's fair to say I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started out, I kind of started my whole venture into psilocybin with cannabis. I was in the cannabis space, involved in Jamaica. And from there, it led me to, I met my partner Vangelis in, I believe at a conference in Prague, we met. And then again in Spanibus, because he lived in Spain at the time. And he was the one who informed me. He's very good at plant extraction. But he had also explained to me that psilocybin was legal in Jamaica. So with that being said, he wanted to pretty much learn from our mistakes in the cannabis industry, where we focused on kind of breeding and production of compounds to production of the compound, like the active ingredients, so psilocin and psilocybin. So that led us down this kind of rabbit hole of breeding. We started with about 14 or 15 kind of different spores and liquid cultures, and then we just started breeding different I guess it would be adding different alkaloids and kind of chemicals to them, to the varieties of mushrooms, to produce higher tryptamine contents for each kind of strain we had. Some of them have higher psilocybin, some of them had higher psilocin kind of onset. So we knew the ones that were higher in psilocin, those are probably better for a quicker onset. And then as well as that led us to kind of the plant extraction, because V was kind of in that world. So he was learning how to extract the psilocybin, turn it into psilocin kind of thing. And then from there, in the whole breeding process, we stumbled upon a variety of mycelium that was able to produce psilocybin, and we grew it in the bioreactor. So essentially allowing us to produce psilocybin in a clean, sterile condition that was highly repetible and highly scalable. So what that allowed us to do is essentially create an active pharmaceutical ingredient, like in the bioreactor, because it's clean, it's sterile, it's completely different than growing mushrooms in like the traditional way that's grown, and as well as a lot quicker. So in 1 week we were able to produce psilocybin versus the traditional kind of 8-week life cycle, 6 to 8 week life cycle that it has to produce psilocybin, and in the clean sterile conditions. So we're pretty proud of that. What I don't know if we were aiming to discover this strain of mycelium. I think we were more looking to breed the most potent mushrooms so that we can have the highest yield of active compounds to then be able to create doses and stuff for people at a lower cost. Because right now, mushrooms that are out there would be probably about 0.6% tryptamine content, maybe 1% if you're lucky, for what you're going to be purchasing on the streets and purchasing from any spore bank for the most part. So our kind of objective was to separate ourselves from the competition, which was one, validating what we had. So all of the strains we had, we validated them by getting them tested. So we actually know how much tryptamine's in it. It's not like, because we seen it. We bought Golden Teacher from one spore provider, you buy it from another spore provider, and they're two different highs, right? So you can't really accurately microdose yourself or accurately dose a patient to really do anything ethical, study wise or anything, if there's no consistency. So that's really what we're aiming for, a level of consistency. V, I don't know if you heard anything, but I don't know if you have anything.
Yes, I hear you, and I'd like to emphasize this, that crop per crop, the same strain with a small difference in parameters, it gives different level of tryptamine. And like this cannot be stabilized the production. This was our initial scope. For this, we start to work with the bioreactor. For sure, took us longer to arrive, to have a goal, because we should create an organism adapt to grow a fungus in the bioreactor. But after a certain period, we are seeing. And this is the unique, I believe, of our approach. Like this, we can deliver in faster period, stabilized compound for analytical standard, and eventually in the future for clinical trials.
It's Dr. V, I have a question for you. How is it possible? Like, how can you make sure that one strain that you grow in the bioreactor has a consistent amount of tryptamines? It's almost like it's a clone, but it seems to me that I don't know a whole lot about the growing process, but it seems amazing to me that you could get a consistent batch of mushrooms to produce a consistent amount of tryptamines. How do you do that?
It's the circle of life of fungus in this type of cultivation. This type of cultivation is a liquid cultivation that it's for expansion of the mycelium. In our bread strain, we achieve to produce stable, constant the tryptamine per ml. Unfortunately, we cannot say openly the amount of tryptamine per ml, because we are in talks with various groups, and it's under agreement of confidentiality. But the final product that come out is also product for dosable medicine, from microdosing up to gram, to the clearest pure psilocybin, that is the prodrug, and we have the capability to transform all this also to psilocybin. 99.8%.
It's fascinating to think about. I'm curious, Anthony, maybe before we dive a little bit deeper, maybe you can talk about how you and Dr. V came to the same sort of ideas about growing this company and starting this company.
I think it was kind of organic. Me and V had a pretty solid friendship before. Like, we have been in, I want to say 10 countries together across from in the world, right? Like, we've been to Israel, we went to Prague together, we went to Spain together, we went to St. Vincent together, we've been to Jamaica together, we've been to, I don't know, countless countries together. And it just, our relationship kind of just grew organically, as friends, and just went from there, really. I mean, we speak daily, even during the pandemic and everything. And we just kept bouncing ideas off of each other and seeing, after the pandemic happened, and we kind of left Jamaica, our next goal was to kind of figure out, okay, well, what do we do now? Like, we have all of these strains that we kind of building and putting together. So the next step was just learning from what we knew about cannabis. I mean, you look at the market for psilocybin, and there's no, I don't know of anybody or any company right now, or even the dispensaries in Canada that you can openly go into in the gray market, where you can go and say, hey, how much tryptamine content does this penis ivy have, or this golden teacher, or any strain in the store? They're going to BS you, right? It's kind of right. Just like in the beginning with the cannabis, it was just smells good, looks good weed, So it's kind of the kind of take on the mushrooms right now. And we wanted to do everything kind of data driven, because we just again, like learning from our experiences from the whole cannabis space. So we knew that there were certain things that added value, and there were certain kind of gaps that were missing in like transparency and a level of efficacy, you know, like for people who are consuming it and selling it. Like right now there's no level of efficacy in my opinion personally. Like, yeah, okay, he might be a good mycologist and he's growing and everything, but if he's not telling you what's in there, then you might as well take it from anybody, right? You don't really know what you're doing. You can't dose it accurately. You can't dose yourself consistently. You can't really heal, you know, like there's all these great healing properties from psilocybin, but I think with any medicine or anything like that, if you can't do it consistently, you're not going to get consistent results, and then it's just all over the place. So that was really our I think approach in building out the company. It was first to do something that was data kind of driven. We don't have any psychological background or anything like that, but we just knew that the level of efficacy that everybody was doing things in was not there. And nothing against ketamine or MDMA, but we were like, okay, well, we know why these are the psychedelics that a lot of companies are focusing on and running with, because they're synthetic. You can create it just like Tylenol. So that was kind of the missing kind of leg there, right? So that's why us being able to produce a naturally occurring compound like we're doing right now and consistently, I think is just revolutionary and truly unique for like the people who are really, I mean, truly seeking that you know, plant-based medicine. I mean, that this is psilocybin's in its truest form, and I think that there's a little bit of danger involved with taking ketamine as well. I think it's much more addictive, more toxic than psilocybin, and I would say the same for MDMA. Like, I think psilocybin is probably the least toxic drug you can take. So I think it's a positive alternative to any pharmaceutical drug or, you know, plant-based medicine that people are taking currently.
It's more mystic approach also than a recreational drug in the years. The mushroom, all the movements in the past that they tried to use mushroom, they couldn't use it as the contemporaneous drug that just nominate Anthony. Plus, I'd like to return in the talk that we have before a little bit, because we need to emphasize also the shelf-life of the compounds in the natural form, in mushroom, even in dry mushroom, very good conserve. There is a certain period that are stable, the compounds. We try to surpass this, and for this we apply techniques of extraction and transformation naturally, all from one compound to other to find, I mean, between the prodrugs for the psilocybin and the psilocin, not just for the effect, for the earlier onset or the different pharmacokinetic approach that have the two compounds, but also for the shelf-life and the conservation of an API, an active pharmaceutical ingredient in time, for being used and for being able to market, position it also in the market, because with a short and unstable shelf-life, it's something, an issue. And this is one of the issues that have the natural compounds in contrast of the chemicals. All our approach is to resolve these problematics that it's normal, it's present in natural compounds, and treat them under the pharmacopoeia to be able to prescribe it as drugs eventually in the future.
Yeah, Dr. V, I have a ton of questions for you, but the sound quality is just killing me on there. So I was
also my accent, because I'm Greek, and a little bit like status of English, because I'm more natural Italian and Spanish speaker.
It's and I can tell that you have like I got a ton of questions and I would like to get into the whole analysis of it and understanding how you isolate the different parts of it and stuff like that. But I think the sound quality is going to be a problem. And so I'll continue to go forward, but it's just, I wish it was a little bit better, but I can try to work on it. I guess my next idea is, let me tell you why I'm really excited about what you guys are doing. I would agree with both Anthony and Dr. V that, you know, what we've seen over the last 100 years in pharmaceuticals has been like this sort of gross negligence almost. It's just almost as taking advantage of people and unfortunately taking advantage of sick people. I'm not saying that there hasn't been a lot of great things that have come from medicine, but it seems to me that the placebo is almost as effective as some of the best-selling drugs on the market right now. That's kind of a problem. And when we look at things like psilocybin or we look at things like ayahuasca, you could make the argument that these have been going through clinical trials for the last 400 years. They're obviously some of the safest things out there. And what I see as a natural extension of that is guys like yourselves coming in here and hopefully being able to not only compete, but take a large share of a new sort of medicine that's coming out. I think that's exciting. And I think it's just goes to prove that, you know, people that, you know, doctors like Dr. V and serial entrepreneurs like Anthony, you guys can compete with the big money players. You know, it's sort of this idea of clinical trials that keeps the smaller guys out. But it seems to me we're moving into a world like cannabis. We're moving into a world like psilocybin, where we're going to be able to not only compete, but take some market share for there. Do you guys see yourself as sort of trailblazing a way for other people to follow behind you?
I think definitely we're definitely trailblazing, and I think the fact that another thing that allows us to operate and work with such high level of flexibility, and even ourselves, like if we really wanted to, and we had enough capital, we could conduct clinical trials in Jamaica. Like it's no different than selling cauliflower or broccoli. Like it's completely legal. So there's the ability to compete with, like you said, there's ability to compete with these publicly traded companies in a way that they're not doing. And I think we're thinking outside of the box. When I look at the publicly traded companies, it seems like they're all kind of chasing the same thing. Like they're not there's not one publicly traded company. What we discovered and just saying, okay, these are our strains of mushroom and testing them. If we can do it, I don't see why a company that's funded with hundreds of millions of dollars can't do it. We literally, V's got connections with the University of Athens and different universities around Europe. We use their qNMR machines. We use their HPLC machines, paid for lab time, tested all of our stuff, and just did it as R&D. So I don't see why they can't do it as well. And are really...
Oh, go ahead. I believe that with the years, we are more realistic in what we target, because we have a long experience in R&D, also from the cannabis sector. More light saying, I can say that before 10 years I was more dreamer. And it was the period also from 2018 that we act together with Anthony, that we base and we obtain a patent in cannabinoid acid, in ester, a form of cannabinoid acid, a new chemical molecule of cannabis that have miraculous results in cancer cell line and in the animal model that we tested. But we need so big fund for move on the trials that was even wrong that we invest capital and we do studies 5 years to create this molecule. In contrast, in mushrooms, having all this background and all this experience, we, as said before, we don't have psychologists in the team right now. We cannot run clinical trials, but same time we are very strong in laboratory of testing, isolate, transform the compounds from one form to the other, and be able to deliver in the market. This is the difference of the group of today, of the R&D group of the past. I respond in two questions together. How it's long the relationship that I have in Anthony in the years, because we are connected with patents in cannabis and long history in R&D, and how we see now all the competition, because I believe that they care to see in qNMR how it's the natural psilocybin in contrast with the synthetic psilocybin, if they check for prodrug or for the drug form, the psilocin, and to see how they bind in the receptor. I believe even the competition, the big pharma, is in position of synergy right now, because now it's starting, it's as was cannabis 50 years before the psychedelic, my opinion.
Let me ask you this: what is the difference? Do you think, like, if let's say a firm or a company can just create 4-ACO-DMT or some sort of synthetic psilocybin? Why is that worse, better than, or equal to taking mushrooms?
Check. Taking mushroom, it's not dosable. Taking mushroom can be a sacred experience inside in Amazon or a recreational approach. For treatment, should be dosable. Now, right now, honestly, I cannot respond you. I can respond you with another example from another psychoactive ambient, cannabinoid, that we know that there is big difference in the action, how they bind the receptors, the natural cannabinoid with the chemical cannabinoid. The synthetic forms of THC have different effects as the natural compounds, and after need a lot of how to say, avoid the proverbs. Let's say that we need more studies for be sure and respond you what is better working in the humans, because it's one, the model that we do in the computer, or the experiments that we set up with looking how they bind the receptor from outside.
Yeah.
Different the animal models, different to arrive in humans. And also, humans with problematics, with mainly the psychedelic and the psilocybin, the psilocin, is for patients that they have psychological disorders, are very fragile, the psyche of this person, for very experimentation. We need to make secure steps when we'll arrive to work with people like this. For help them, not create them more problematic. Because till now the trials that it's running have very significant and very good results. With psilocybin, all the trials that we are looking for the addiction with alcoholism, for depression, very, very positive and promising results for keep going the trial. Test the dosing, test the purity of the compounds. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, it seems to me like you guys have done quite a bit of research on finding different strains too. When I was reading through the bio that you guys had sent, you have a pretty deep drawer, man. You got a pretty big library of different strains. How many strains have you guys found in there, or do you have cataloged?
We have over 100 different strains of psilocybin, but I mean, there's really only probably like 10 to 12 that we'll end up using. As far as I think I sent you the test results as well, so you can see a lot of them are pretty close in range as far as tryptamine content. So there's some that are more unique that have a higher amount of like psilocine, which I think is unique because that's like the active right away compound that'll have a quicker onset for patients. But I mean, of the 100 in the library, we're probably only gonna be using like 10 to 15, 20 at most. I don't think we're gonna be using them all. But I mean, it's just how quickly you can breed them and how quickly the mushrooms reproduce. We could cross and breed much more strains than we could ever in our in our wildest dreams in 2 years with cannabis.
Yeah, it seems interesting to me. I was recently talking with a gentleman who's they've done something interesting. They've created this compound called psilocybin. And what they have done is they've taken the 5-MeO-DMT and they fed it to the mushrooms, and now the mushroom begins to produce that 5-MeO-DMT. So I'm beginning to see these new ways of cultivating. But I have to agree with Dr. V that and this is just my opinion, I believe that there's something to be said about the organic process that follows through with the treatment. When you take an organic product, you have an organic treatment. Once we begin moving into this idea of, creating or adding a molecule here, or, putting something into the cleavage site or something like that, they start making these monsters that may or may not have bad long-term side effects that we don't know about. But I am curious to get your opinion on, you guys have both worked with cannabis in the past. Do you see maybe the future of psilocybin shaping up the way that cannabis did? Are there some pitfalls that we should be aware of?
I think the biggest thing is just like any kind of rush, right? Just like there was a green rush for cannabis, I think with this whole renaissance for psychedelics, you're going to find people who are genuinely pros at what they do, and there's going to be genuinely cons at what they're doing. So some people are going to be selling you snake oil, which I'll be honest, like I know that psilocybin has great effects and can be used to create a wide to help create treatments for a wide range of mental illness. But I think the biggest thing is some people are just treating it like snake oil, right? Like it can fix everything, and it can do this and it can do that. And half the people talking, like, I mean, perfect example is all of these studies that we're speaking of, like John Hopkins, all of these guys, all the papers I've read, none of them really mention the overall tryptamine content of the mushrooms that they're feeding the patients. So there's still like a level that's kind of just missing there in data for it to be fully data driven. So I think that's kind of one way we will like not change the game, but just separate ourselves from the competition and create like a new standard, I think.
I like the idea of new standards. I think that there's ways I would like to see, and this may be a pie in the sky idea, but I think it's possible to decentralize the clinical trial process the same way we see this world of decentralization happening in money, in the same way we see this decentralized sort of government taking place. I think that the same thing can happen for clinical trials, and I think what you guys are doing can be a big part of that. There's no reason why we couldn't crowdfund a clinical trial. There's no reason why we couldn't crowdsource a clinical trial and have, you could have your psychologist, you could have Dr. V in Greece or Jamaica, and then you could have a team of other people throughout the world. And maybe instead of having a patient in a clinical setting, you could have surveys done where, have a large scale survey. And I think that the information you would get from a trial like that would be surprisingly accurate in what it's forecasting or what it's unable to do. But yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys are moving forward on. And when I look at some of the similarities between the green rush, like you said, and what's shaping up here with this psilocybin rush, I'm wondering if you guys have begun to see any new sort of things happening. Like, are we gonna start seeing extracts like 4x and 2x? You start seeing these gummies come out. What do you guys see? Or do you have any ideas of what might be moving in the future right there?
I think all the same things we saw in cannabis, right? People are going to be chasing the extracts, the concentrates, the gummy, like they're all there right now. I see vapes. Well, I haven't seen any psilocybin vapes. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I've seen DMT vapes. I've seen people try and make psilocybin edibles. There's tons of chocolates and teas, and different things that you can get that are out there. But I don't know. The only thing I haven't really seen is any psilocybin suppositories, which I'm surprised. But you would think
the last hype that we saw was DMT vape in the UK that impressed me. I believe that all these are also psychiatric medicine, that the abuse of these compounds can create psychosis. Need to be full. Wait. We have also workers who hear the sound. Can create psychosis if we abuse them. And also, we return again in the same problematic that had cannabis, the illegal extractions, the adulterants that they put inside, that can create, from there, start to create the problematic in the population, plus the abuse of the compound. That means this that we nominate now the DMT vape, what rest of solvents have inside, except the psychosis can create if you use it. Maybe have the same bad effect for the lungs that have a very bad vapes from China that create problems at the States the last 3 years. And we have this.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just the unknown. But I definitely think that people are gonna push the boundaries and do everything they can do. Like I said, man, I think you're gonna be seeing every and any product you've seen come out of cannabis. I think you'll see a psychedelic product as well. And people are just testing the marketing, seeing what sticks and what doesn't really stick, because it's all pretty new. And I think there's a lot of people who want to get into the space, and there's in the US there's all these jurisdictions where it's opening up. In Canada, it's much more they're pretty lean back. I don't think they're really looking or doing anything. The people growing psilocybin, and that's coast to coast. Whereas the US, it's much more like geographic, California, Oregon, Colorado. And then you have places like Mexico, Brazil, Jamaica, Samoa, where it's just completely free for all, do what you want to do. So I think it'll be interesting how I think I personally am a strong believer in Jamaica and the brand of Jamaica, and I appreciate what we can do there, and we don't have our hands tied. So it's allowed us to even get to where we are right now, because I don't think that being in Canada we would have been able to operate the way we have been so openly and do these kind of things and make the announcements publicly, and just put ourselves out in the front page of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve, and looking for collaboration and investors.
I'd like to give a small example in this that you say now, Anthony, about the last work that we've done for the new way of matrices of tryptamine compounds with the qNMR. The idea was initially from the University of Athens, but missing license of psychedelic. And like this, we collaborate with the Canada University, run the test there that the guys in Canada, they didn't know to read them, to return the fuzz in Athens, for make the presentation in the Congress. Same time now in Jamaica, we are in talks with the university, and we're going to run infinity samples and presentation and paper about psychedelic mushrooms. This capability comes with the synergy that we have here in Jamaica with the government, with the universities, plus the private sector. In this case, our company.
Yeah, I think for the private sector in Jamaica too, there's big companies there like Compass, and I think Berkeley's is there as well. There's Awake. There's all these retreats and things that are there right now happening.
Right.
So I think it's also another good position for us to be in a place like that, because what separates one retreat from the other could be purchasing from us and knowing that, you know, there's a level of consistency in what you're providing these patients or your clients who come to your retreats. So I think that'll be pretty interesting to see. And then I know Berkeley's is running, they have their studies and clinical trials. So I think it'll be nice. I think where we're positioned is in a right place to collaborate with some of these guys and, you know, show them what we had, what we have, and show them that there's a better approach to, I guess, the psilocybin that they've been giving to people and testing the people, giving people. So we can show them that everything we have is database, more ethical, transparency. So, you know, you can give this golden teachers to your patients, or you can give them the golden teacher that you don't know the tryptamine content, and you'll have no consistency.
Or even pure compounds. We concentrate from the mushroom, we analyze, and we can deliver as much they want for their trial. 10 mg, 15 mg, 20 mg, depends how it's their program with their doctor.
Yeah.
It's not problem. Also, pro-drug, you want to administrate pro-drug and happen all the reaction in the stomach, or you want easier and quicker onset and administrate the drug. Plus, this is new. It's the first time we say it on air. The tryptamines are 4, but one is not active. And we have a variety that has high concentration. And we'd like to find a synergy because we managed to isolate it to see how it works in trials. Because can bind the receptor, can give results in the patient without the high. But honestly, without trials, we cannot respond to. Sure, we have cleaned the compound for synergy to give it to a third sort party.
Yeah, so I think to V's point is what we're looking to really do is explore all. Like, I believe V, correct me if there's wrong, but I think there's 4 major compounds in psilocybin.
Yes.
2 psychoactive, 2 are non-psychoactive. So we're also looking to explore with some of the non-psychoactive compounds that are in psychedelic mushrooms to see what effects those will have on people as well. And we're also looking to grow psychedelic mushrooms as well, Reiki, lion's mane, all those popular ones as well. But I mean, I think right now our main focus has been on the psychedelics, just because it's just market trends, what's kind of trending right now, what's, you know, picking up traction, and so that's kind of where we're looking at that right now. But I think definitely we're going to be exploring compounds in psychedelic mushrooms, non-psychedelic mushrooms, and as well as, really, like V said, we want to see what is the effect of the non-psychedelic compounds that are in these psychedelic mushrooms, right? Like, do they have enough? Do they play a role in this whole experience that people are having? Can we give people some of these effects that they're having for psilocybin without psilocybin and psilocybin? So that's kind of our next kind of rabbit hole we want to dive into. And like you said, it's can be easily crowdfunded. We're in Jamaica. It's running surveys and stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of university kids, tourists who are coming to the island. Even if they're there for a week or 2 weeks, all the data is good data. The more data we have, it's better, right? So I think the possibilities are endless as far as that goes.
Yeah, I want to, since you were talking, like, first off, I'm stoked on you and Dr. V for being here. And I really enjoy listening to what you guys have planned for the future. And I am psyched on psychedelics for the future. But I think Jamaica has an incredible opportunity. And here's what I've been thinking about that I don't think anybody else is thinking about. You know, when you think about grapes and think about wine, if you want to get champagne, you can only get champagne from France. If you want to get Prosecco, it has to be Italy. If you want to get tequila, it has to be a certain region of Mexico. You know, I think that Jamaica is uniquely set up to have a certain strain of mushrooms or a certain brand of mushrooms, like champagne, like a certain grape has champagne.
Like a terroir, like we want to create like a terroir here, kind of like mushrooms. And I think there is a local variety of mushrooms that grow, I think, between like Cuba, island of Hispaniola, Dominican and Haiti, and Jamaica. So there is like a local variety of mushrooms that grows there. I think we do have some of it. It's not very potent, but I definitely think there's a possibility to do that. You know, for people who want to have mushrooms that are indigenous to that region. So I think and I also think that majority of the psychedelic mushrooms are going to be more mostly found in like more tropical climates as far as that goes. I mean, there's psychedelics you can find in Oregon and stuff, but I believe that more varieties are found across like the kind of equatorial equator belt around there. So in like Central America, the Caribbean, I would imagine even like Asia must have some good ones, and in India as well.
Of course.
So I definitely think that's a possibility. It's,
for a liquid culture for mycologistic purpose, we have all the local varieties because we collaborate also with a local department. But honestly speaking, to emphasize with what Anthony is saying, here, yes, are psychedelic, but certainly it's not the same psychedelic as.
Oh, we lost him. But I think what he's going to say is it's not the same psychedelics as what people are used to in North America. They're much more potent. Like the psychedelics that people are buying and taking already in Canada and in the US, this would be a microdose. Like the indigenous mushrooms that grow in Jamaica would be like good for microdosing, and that's about it. Not a eagle trip or a heavy trip or anything like that. It'll just be good for microdosing. And I definitely think there's something to be explored there as far as, you know, Jamaica having its own terroir around around psilocybin, because I wanted to introduce that and have that for cannabis. But it's a good brand. I think I don't see why not. I think there's countries that can definitely have that claim stake to it. It's just, I guess, who will be the front runner of that.
Yeah, and I think that's a whole different form of, you know, branding and crowdsourcing, and it's analogous in a way though, because you have alcohol that you need to sterilize everything with. You have different levels of alcohol that do different things, you know. And Dr. V, I got a question for you. Do you think that, and I know that none of us are psychiatrists and we're just kind of spitballing here, but in my mind, I'm wondering if maybe different strains of mushrooms or different levels of psilocybin, we may find out these different levels or different strains treat different ailments. Is that something that could possibly happen?
V, I don't know if he heard you or if he's there, but I think.
What do you think, Anthony?
I think for I don't know if it's different strains in particular. I think it's strictly the compound and strictly the amount of the compound the patient's taking, probably based on their illness, and maybe body weight would have something to do with it. I know, like, for a lethal dose of psilocybin, your body weight has something to do with it. As far as the medicinal purposes, I definitely, I don't think the strains have much to do with it. I think it's more the compounds that are in there, and then, like I said, it could be as well as you might have a point for certain things, because of the 4 compounds that are in psilocybin, one of the 4 might be higher in a different variety than another, and maybe that non-psychoactive compound has some medicinal effects that we don't know about. But I mean, I don't know enough to kind of say yes or no, but I think my opinion on it right now is just based on the study that I've seen. It's mostly, all the studies have been psilocybin, this many mgs of pure psilocybin, 20, 10, 30 to treat a certain ailment. So I don't know if there's really like certain strains that are good for certain things. But I think it would be interesting in seeing, like I said before, the other.
There is, I believe, also a relationship between the lack of data that was in the past. In the nature, there is strains that some of them have more psilocin than psilocybin, and vice versa. These have different in the effect. Some strains have longer onset. You feel the high later, but is longer the duration. Other strains have very quick onset because contain more psilocin in contrast of psilocybin, and looks stronger because the effect come quicker. All these confuse what we know till today, I believe, and now start the true R&D and the examination strain by strain, the percentual, the potency, and eventually how should be used. But honestly speaking, I don't believe that we use at the end strains, but clean compounds for medicinal purpose.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. I've been often wondering lately, like, when, let's say you take a moderate dose, say like 5 grams or even 3.5 grams, it seems to me the way in which psilocybin works is that it comes in these waves. But much like Dr. V was saying, sometimes the interval between waves is shorter, sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's stronger, sometimes it's weaker. And it's that particular method of action that makes me curious about the interaction of different kind of compounds. Or, it's interesting to think that if you stack compounds, maybe that duration of wave is shorter, maybe the height or frequency of the waves is more intense. But I think that's something really worthy of research, at least that I'm looking into in the future, is, and might it be possible to look at oceanography to see how a wave breaks in the ocean? Is that the same way that the wave hits us when we're taking psilocybin? It's kind of a crazy thing to think about, but I think that that's what trips me out, Anthony and Dr. V, is what is making the duration of the waves? What is increasing the intensity of the waves? Because I think that has to be, if I take 4-ACO-DMT, and then I take a penis envy one day, and then I take a blue meanie another day,
Trust me, it's more confusing from what you nominate. Why? Because even if you start change the nutrients in the medium, change also the same strain in potency from crop to crop. If change the parameters of humidity in the growth sample, change the percentage of secondary metabolites. For this reason, the same variety, let's go in something familiar, the Liberty Cup in UK, from terroir to terroir, it's different the potency. It's nice for how to say, for recreational purpose, all this story, all this drama. But it's not a useful tool for medicinal purpose.
It blows my mind. We have a guest that asks this question. Let me put it up so people can see. This comes from Benjamin George. MAOIs definitely impact the waves in duration. That would be the. I think that we take sometimes in ayahuasca they take an MAO inhibitor. So I guess that would be a protein that stops the waves or duration, is what he's saying. Any thoughts on that?
I believe the Maori in ayahuasca have to do with activation to fulfill the compounds. I'm not so familiar with ayahuasca, but from what I read, it works like this, the two compounds.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what. Let me ask you this, Anthony. What are you most excited about for the future of psychedelics and entheogens in the upcoming year?
I think I'm excited for the studies, more research, more data. I think that's really what I'm looking forward to. Legislation's opening up and more people just taking a new kind of outlook on it. It's not just like a hippie drug, Like I think it has benefits deeper and well beyond what the general public perceives it to be. I think it's just a matter of us kind of unlocking it and using these kind of natural tools to naturally heal ourselves instead of what we've been doing, which is like process and preservatives and synthetics and all of these things. So I think it's just to take a step back and start some. I'm big on the natural compounds, so I'm not gonna deny that. So I think that's what I'm most excited for. What the breakthroughs that we'll have in more of these natural compounds as far as the psilocybin goes. And I think that COVID was a blessing and a curse, because I think that opened up a lot of people's eyes to how, and for a lack of better terms, how fucked up we are. You were trapped. You're trapped in this box, like by yourself or with your significant other or with your kids or with whatever, and you didn't have the necessary vices or ability to go outside or just escape these things. So then you're kind of just there by yourself, either by yourself or with your family, and then like all these kind of things just start opening. Like you just open Pandora's box and you realize that, okay, maybe I'm a little stressed, or I have OCD, or I suffer from anxiety, or like all these little things. Just people just started kind of opening up the door and understanding and realizing more. And I think that now there's a much more today, I think, even today versus post, like pre-COVID, post-COVID, like, well, I don't think we're post-COVID, I'm still kind of in it, but I think like now there's a much more acceptance to like mental health, mental illness, and these things are much more talked about. I think there's like I don't know about in the States so much, but I know we have like mental illness day and week in Canada and all of these things. So it's much more mainstream, and the whole kind of wellness, like just healthy, like physically, mentally, spiritually. I think that's kind of a big thing right now.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. I think that in a lot of ways, COVID was a blessing. I think it allowed us to take a little break and look at who we are and what we're doing, and if we like who we are and if we like what we're doing. And I think a lot of people found out they didn't really love who they were, and they didn't love what they were doing. And it's interesting because the same thing happens on a psychedelic experience. A lot of people have a psychedelic experience where they look inward and they say, you know what, I don't like this about me, or I don't like the way I'm stressed out about this. And I think it would be a fascinating survey to see people who have spent time with entheogens and psychedelics, what their thoughts were on the COVID and what they've done about it. But it's interesting. It's a fascinating time to be alive. And on another idea of legislation in psychedelics, in Colorado, it seems to me that while the legislation has been a big boon for a lot of people, it also seems to be pushing out some of the smaller people and making room for the pharmaceutical industries. I'm wondering what you think, if that is something else that could happen, or is that just like a natural progression of legalization? Do you think the same thing could happen to psilocybin?
Yeah, I think the same thing will happen with I think much more than cannabis, it'll happen with psilocybin. Pharma companies wanting to step in. As much as I'm a big cannabis advocate, I think that there are medicinal properties to cannabis, don't get me wrong, but I think for across the kind of mainstream broad range, most people are taking it recreationally, right, maybe therapeutically. No different than like, for instance, like I always tell people in Jamaica, they're like, well, is it medical or what is it? It's therapeutic. Like you can come into a dispensary in Jamaica, and if you just have a significant other, that's enough reason to get a for cannabis, right? Like most people, if you have a reason to have a beer or smoke a cigarette, you can probably get a prescription for cannabis in Jamaica, right? There's that kind of aspect of it. So I think that it'll be kind of interesting what happens going forward with the psychedelics and what happens there in that realm.
I believe because it's a different type of experience between to smoke a joint than take one dose of psychedelic mushroom, are time depending also the intention of the experience, that I believe that the audience, even with for recreational purpose, will be more different audience. A little bit more with knowing what they are doing, because they dedicate in 4 or 5 hours of intense guide. It's a little bit like the edibles in cannabis. Certainly, we risk the same problematics that have evidence in cannabis.
Yeah.
For accidents from small children, or for people that have professions that they run tests and accidentally they can fail in a test in the work. Start another ethic how we need to deal and approach dispensaries with mushrooms.
Yeah. And I think also too with a big difference between the psychedelics versus cannabis is there are countless studies happening around psychedelics. Like I think there's like over 100 happening currently, and maybe like 300 or 400 in the pipeline. I don't think there was ever this much interest in like actually studying cannabis, learning about it, learning all the cannabinoids and all this kind of things. There's much more institutional money going into it, government money going into it and it's more global, I think, too. Whereas cannabis was kind of isolated in little pockets. You had like the guys were doing what they were doing in California. You had some guys doing it in Canada. You had some guys in Holland. Whereas like when I read about the psilocybin, it's like happening all over. There's companies in Israel. There's companies in the UK. There's companies in Netherlands. There's companies in just almost every jurisdiction, every continent. Something's happening, whether it's a company doing it or the government's looking to reform or put some studies in or looking to legalize it, or there's much more talks about it. And don't get me wrong, I think cannabis helped grandfather and have a lot of these conversations for these legislations, right? So it's like cannabis maybe paved the way a little bit to help people digest it, because I think definitely cannabis is easier pill to swallow than say, hey, like I'm gonna go take LSD. Like, you know, somebody thinks LSD, they think like, okay, like this guy is gonna be tripping forever, and whereas cannabis, okay, he smokes a joint, he just eats the whole fridge out. But LSD, you know, like I'm sure we've all heard crazy stories, and like they can all induce psychosis and they'll have like their negative side effects. But I definitely think that psilocybin, like the not even just psilocybin, but psychedelics in general, will be bigger because there's more studies conducted on it in the past, present, and I from what I can see coming in the future, there's more studies than I ever heard of in cannabis.
Yeah, I think that money is a giant issue, and I've seen the way in which they're slow rolling out legislation, at least in my opinion, to maximize profits and find a way for the big pharma to kind of wrap their arms around it as a whole. And I'm wondering if, you know, in my darker moments, it seems to me that if the biggest pharmaceutical companies are unable to fully wrap the tentacles around it, I think you could see something like the 60s happen again. I think you could see a Jonestown or a Manson or some sort of reason avail itself where they shut everything down. It's sort of like, I'm going to take my ball and go home if we can't control it. You know, and I'm wondering if you guys see any sort of, you know, even if they're hypothetical, some sort of giant things playing out if things don't go a certain way, or do you see any sort of walls that could be up against?
For the walls, I think definitely the governments, really. I mean, I think even for the US, you guys don't even have cannabis legalized there or decriminalized even on a federal level. So I think the US is a big global player in kind of global relations, global things, the UN drug reforms and all of these things. So I think whatever the US does, kind of the rest of the world will follow. And if they'll be watching you guys pretty closely, I think other jurisdictions and other places. And a lot of that too, like to another point is like the banking, right? That's a big thing.
Right.
Like you can't grow your company without good banking legislation. Right. But right now, psilocybin is a class 1 drug. Majority of countries, their biggest capital reserves are in US dollars. There's no way they're going to bank a drug that's class 1 drug in that country and lose all their reserve money or their access to like US markets because you're starting a little psilocybin or little ketamine company or whatever you're doing, right? Like these countries don't want to lose that relationship with the US, and I can strongly and firmly say that with Jamaica. They don't want to lose that relationship with the US. I don't think Mexico wants to lose that relationship with the US. I don't think Brazil, I don't think any of these countries where psilocybin is completely legal, they do not want to jeopardize the relationship with the US. So I think the legislation for the U.S. is a big thing in shaping what happens globally, just because of the U.S. dollar having such a grip on the global economy, right? Because it's not even to the point. It's not even about the legislation in your country. It could be completely legal in your country, but no bank wants to take your money because their reserves are all in U.S. and they just don't want to expose themselves to that level of risk, right? And you have all these, what is it, like terrorist acts and anti-drug and narcotics, all these things. Like I've had my accounts closed down in Jamaica for my cannabis company several times on just I forget what they have. There's like a thing they send you, like a letter, and it's literally, that's what it is. It's like they're pretty much anti-terrorist and anti-drug or money laundering and like all these kind of things they're afraid of, right? So I think Big Pharma will do whatever they can do to like you said, it's money. Everything's about money in this day and age, it seems. So they will definitely do what they can do to prevent the growth and inhibit the growth or take control of the growth as best they can.
Yeah, that seems to be the American way. You know, we, for better or for worse, they tend to, what is the quote that says, if you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail? Something like that.
Yeah.
Dr. V, I'm wondering as someone who has spent a lot of time, in the medical community and doing research, and I know you don't speak for all doctors, but would you say there's a positive aura around the world of psychedelics right now?
I didn't hear all the question. I hear the half, sorry. The signal, it wasn't good. Can you repeat, please?
Sure. So I know you don't speak for all the doctors, but do you think that maybe for some of your colleagues, what do you think is there a positive outlook for psychedelics in the future?
I believe that need time to mature. Right now, we are in the first steps that some institutions with some universities, they are interested to compute studies and they start to compute studies. It's like the very, very first years in cannabis. We need to mature, all of us, from this process. And because certainly it's a solution for various problematics of big part of mental pathologies, I believe that my colleague is going to follow, but it's discuss of time. If you press it, I believe it's not the right approach. Need studies, more studies, and more R&D. I believe that in mushrooms we are in. Say it again.
Oh, no, please, go ahead.
No. I was saying that now it's time. All the companies are pioneers, even the companies with the synthetic approach, even us and other companies that are trying to work with natural compounds. Now we rediscover what the shaman worked with our ancestors thousands of years.
Yeah, I agree. I'm wondering about this, Dr. V. It seems to me that there are real risks for people who have mental illness and psychedelics, but there's a whole nother class of people that may use psychedelics in a responsible way for other sort of problems. And it seems a divide in the medical community may be, how do we separate these groups? Do you think that maybe for people that have documented mental problems, that maybe they should have to have a prescription, or they should have to do it in a different way than someone that doesn't have a problem with depression? Or how do you think that we could separate the at-risk people from people that may not be at risk as much?
It's a very, very long discourse on this. Have in mind that I'm Greek, and in the ancient times in Greece, we have the Eleusinian mysteries.
Yeah.
So, I believe also healthy citizen need once per time, once in lifetime, to have a psychedelic experience, because you start to reevaluate different your ego, or but with the true word of ego, not the ego of moda, this that say the Asian Greek for ego, yourself, your inner self, and the relationship that you have with the others around you, and your position in the community and in the planet. And I believe that for opening these doors of perception, some of us need help. And this help, or a vehicle, let's say it's better a vehicle, can be the psychedelics. For other people, can be the religion. Every individual is different. But I believe my approach, how I raise the friends that I have in school and in the university, I'm from this type of person that we believe in psychedelics, in the how they can contribute in the society. But it needs a lot of ethics for giving it in the society. It's a big tool. Even the secret of the Eleusinian mysteries, only the sacerdote know about the lysergic acid and how to do the process. And it was a big scandal once that it's huge, the secret, and Alcibiades, as a politician, used it in a symposium in Athens. When some of these stories, it's a good example to follow today.
Yeah, I think that I wrote a book a while back, and in my book, I argued that we need a return of the Eleusinian mysteries. It seems to me that, when you, in my mind, if I close my eyes and I imagine myself at a giant open theater where on one side of me there is someone from the lowest class, and on someone on the right hand side of me there may be, Elon Musk. And together we're watching the birth and death of Persephone and Demeter, and all of a sudden the daughter's gone. And we as a group collectively take in something that is a real tragedy. It's like we as a group experience that tragedy together, and then we come through that tragedy together. And it's almost a type of language that is beyond words, because we can experience something together. And I think on a light dose of psychedelics, or even a moderate dose of psychedelics, that's the same thing that's happening in a ceremonial setting. And that's kind of where a lot of healing is done. When we together are going through tragedies and solving those tragedies, that is the great equalizer in life, because it doesn't matter your race, your religion, your age, your stature. Hey, we did this together. And that's something we can have forever. Like, you'll never forget that experience.
Yeah, I've actually read about a lot of indigenous First Nations people in the States, as well as in Canada. Like, they would have that's what they would do. They would take either psilocybin, I think ayahuasca as well, and they would go in the sweat lodge, and they do it like as a community. Whoever was the alcoholic, so like the troubled people in the community, and the healers would heal them. So I definitely think that there is something to the healing process as a community together with people versus just experiencing it by yourself. And to something you said earlier, I think maybe people that have psychosis, they maybe need to experience it by themselves with a psychiatric. And then maybe people who are less vulnerable or less thing, they can experience it in a communal kind of setting, something like that. But I mean, those are all things for us to explore, and no better place than Jamaica to do it. But I think that there's definitely something there. I think you definitely hit the nail on the head there. Like, I think there's people who have psychosis definitely can't take it in the same way that someone who doesn't. Right. And maybe there's something in taking a dosage in a communal kind of environment that can maybe enhance it. So I agree. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about if in a group setting, if there is someone experienced there, if someone does begin to have a bad one, you want that someone with experience to at least pull them out of there a little bit. But this brings me to an idea of retreats, which you guys said there's a bunch of them in Jamaica. I've been reading some different accounts of people who are, the idea of going to Brazil, the idea of going to Jamaica, the idea of going to a different place to experience or have this psychedelic experience, in some ways seems a little bit obtuse to me because, if I go to Brazil, like I'm not from Brazil, I don't speak Portuguese. Like, how much am I missing the translation of what's actually happening? And some white guy from Caucasian acres over here, what do I know about what's going on down there? Am I missing out on some of the transformative information by going to this other culture and, definitely getting an experience, but am I getting the experience that doctor would give to somebody else? Because I don't understand it. I'm wondering if things get lost in trends when people retreats from different cultures. What do you think?
For sure. I think things definitely get lost in translation. It's inevitable. I think, there's such different cultural, even me, I'm of Jamaican descent. I've been going to Jamaica my whole life, and there's certain things that I just can't,
Right.
If somebody tells you in Jamaica soon come, that could be 5 minutes or 5 hours. You don't know. Like, it's just, there's certain things that are just not the same. So I definitely hear that. And something I was thinking about is like, for people that are going on a psychedelic, adventure or trip, I was looking into it and thinking, like, I think the whole metaverse and like the virtual reality could be something to standardize that. Like, if there was somebody who's like tech savvy, who works with a psychologist, who can be like, okay, this is like the visual effects and the sounds that said person needs to hear for 4 to 6 hours, and like, then kind of standardize it, or even, I don't know what they can do, but I think that's something that'd be interesting to kind of keep the I guess the environmental consistency for what the patient is going into. Because, like, I know when you go to some retreats or you do some things, they would have the patient blindfolded. Other people, it's more communal, everybody's holding hands and partaking together. So I think that if we can have like some kind of virtual reality as a happy medium, where somebody, they say, okay, like, this is kind of the traditional approach to having a shaman there, or somebody to guide you through this trip, but we're modernizing it with, this VR headset or this video that you're watching while you're taking this trip. I think that is something that could help the whole kind of industry to not only excel, but I think treat a lot more people, because it's expensive right now to go and get, like, whether it's ketamine or whether it's psilocybin, any psychedelic treatment, to get assisted treatment is expensive. And that be whether it's the shaman who says he's had taken people on 1,000 trips, they're going to charge you $2,000, or if you go to one of these legitimate publicly traded companies, it could be $5,000. Like, so it's really expensive. It's not cheap at all. So I think that's a real barrier of entry from people receiving the help that they need and could possibly want. So I think whoever does something like that to standardize it or make it more accessible, more obtainable for people, will be a big step.
Yeah. In some ways, one of the things I love about psychedelics or entheogens is that they're kind of hard to commercialize. It's in some ways that's a giant barrier for entry, because if it costs $2,000 or $4,000, the people that might need the therapy the most probably don't have that kind of money or how are they going to get 2 weeks off to go somewhere, or how are they going to get on this waiting list? And some ways it's.
I definitely hear you loud and clear. I'm in Vancouver, and there's tons of people here that I think could benefit. Well, a lot of addiction here. So I think there's a ton of people here that exactly are in that box that you just said. They can benefit from it more than the guy who has $10,000 to go on a retreat. Probably light years more than that guy, but they're never going to have $1, $2, $3, $4, $5,000 put aside to go and get help and go and get treatment. So yeah, I think that's it's it's true. It's a barrier of entry.
Yeah, and I think, but with barriers of entries come shortcuts sometimes, and shortcuts aren't always good. But I think that this does pave the way for small, and I think that this is one of the things that's happening is that people are trying to figure out the legislative branch as far as licensing, and this gets us back into the people that may have serious mental illness. Like, that person should probably go see a therapist before they do any kind of psychedelic. However, if let's say me or you or somebody we know has been working with entheogens for 20 years, 25 years, and you have a friend at work that you've known for 5 years, and you know that this person just lost somebody, I think that having the access to psychedelics and allowing an individual who may not be a doctor but has worked with a substance for quite some time, that person may not be a doctor, but they could definitely be a facilitator or a trip sitter. And they could probably get really good results with someone in their family, someone they care about, or a friend of a friend that they care about. And I think that that's kind of the great democratization of medicine coming. And I think entheogens are kind of showing us that. What's your take on maybe the experienced user helping out people in their direct circle?
I think that's the only way. That's the only way to for majority of people to kind of get access to a guided trip, right? Like, because who's gonna pay $5,000, $3,000 to go and sit down with a psychologist who you don't know, you don't trust, you maybe don't even want to open up to this person, right?
Right.
So I think that definitely if you have somebody who's a part of your network and a part of your circle of people that can help you indulge on one of these trips, I think that to trip sit you, that's probably your best bet. Your best bet right now. I think there's going to be no majority of the people who need the help can't afford it, so that's really their only option, right? It's either that or reading Reddit posts forever trying to find somebody to help you. So I think and even it's hard in general for people to come and say, hey, like I'm like, I don't know what's wrong, but something's wrong. Like, I'm feeling really sad, or I'm feeling a little like, suicidal, or I'm just like, I have like this intense level of anxiety that I sweat every time I go to, I don't know, public speaking or something like that. Like, like I just think a lot of people think back to what we spoke about earlier. A lot of people wear like a mask, right? Like you have this mask on that you portray yourself to society. So it's kind of, I think society looks at mental health as a weakness, right? So people are scared to admit their weakness and their vulnerabilities. And I think that's also another big hurdle, right? Like, is once the general population has a different outlook and mindset on it, then maybe more people will come forward, right? There's so many. I mean, I'm an ex-athlete, and I got to meet yesterday. Oh man, Corey Helsher, I believe that's his name. He's a hockey player. He's a goalie who won the silver medal, and he suffered. He was like the first NHL player to admit that he was suicidal, and like came out, had an article out, and he had this article, and he told us it had like 2-3 million hits on it, like a LeBron James kind of article, and he's just a regular NHL keeper. He's not like the best one out there, like Wayne Gretzky of hockey, right? But I think that people were so it touched and reached so many people because he wasn't alone. I'm sure there's tons of athletes. You're supposed to be this tough hockey player. You're supposed to be this tough football player that are suffering inside, but because you're the tough guy, or you're on your NHL team. Another guy I know, Riley Cotier, he's a NHL player, and I've spoken to him various times, and he was like an enforcer. So he's literally, his job is to go out there and bang you up, beat you up, and that's it. And like, he's had, I think, tremendous benefits from psychedelics and cannabis as well. And I think just for them to open up and tell people what they're suffering from and what they're dealing with, it's hard for all of these guys, whether it be football, hockey, basketball, golf, tennis. These guys are under tremendous pressure. And, like every day you miss a shot, you've got 20 million people on Twitter and Instagram just tearing you to shreds, right? And not everybody, not like a regular person's never going to have to deal with that. Like, I mean, if you like, well, I mean, you can see it right now. If you have an adolescent kid who has to deal with, peer pressures and bullies and stuff online, some of them don't know how to deal with that. And then they turn to being depressed. They turn to suicide. They turn to all of these kind of negative things because they don't want to, I guess, I don't know what they don't want to do, but my thought process is the fear of going and seeking help, right? Is kind of the big thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that is, if I could piggyback onto that, the topic of masks, the topic of peer pressure, the topic of anxiety, depression, all these small things that daily happen to us that begin blocking our way or making us think a different way. It seems to me that a lot of the profound effects that come from psychedelics are the ideas of you seeing yourself in a different way. Hopefully that's a more honest way. Hopefully that's a different outlook or a different understanding of who you are. But that's what leads you to solve your own problems. It seems to me that one thing that's so profound about psychedelics is the understanding that comes with it. And it takes time to process. Like if you have a big trip and you go, you know what? I probably shouldn't kick my cat. I don't think he likes that. It makes me feel a little good. First of all, I don't kick my cat, but I think people have this understanding like, oh God, I don't know why I was doing that. What the hell is wrong with me? Why would I do that? But it's maybe it's this lifetime of being put into a world where we're forced to go to work for 10 hours. Maybe it's this education system where we're not really taught about real history, but we're taught about someone's idea of history. Maybe all this psychosis and all this mental illness and all this depression and all these societal ailments have just been the world stacking up on us for 10, 15, 20 years. And if you look at it, seems that psychosis for people begin to really establish themselves in the teenage years. And think about how much repression has gone through. By the time you're a teenager, man, you've put up with a lot of crap, especially if you came from a broken home, or if you had one parent that was maybe an alcoholic, or it just seems to me that psychedelics, and I'm not a psychologist like that, but it seems that psychedelics tend to put us in a position where we see ourselves as part of nature. And I'm curious, like, what is your take on the idea of that spiritual nature? It seems that I'm not a particularly religious person, but it seems that psychedelics have a spiritual component to it. And that spiritual component helps relieve a lot of the stress. Whether you're a enforcer in hockey, or whether you're George, the UPS driver, or you're Anthony, the serial entrepreneur. What is your take with the relationship between spirituality and psychedelics?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a spiritual kind of element there, because it allows you to, I guess, step back and kind of see things from like a broad view. It's almost like, how could I say it? It's like, it's almost like if you were like playing like Grand Theft Auto and you're seeing everything around you in like third person view, like you're away from the situation. You can see everything. You kind of know what's going on. You can slowly kind of break it down. Depending on how much mushrooms you take, like the things are more intensified, and that'll be just simply from looking at like a glass of water. You feel like you can see the molecules in it.
Yeah,
you can see the H2O like actually there. You can see these elements. You can hear and see the sound more vibrant, more colors are more vibrant, and that kind of thing. So I definitely think there's a spirituality there as well, because you'll see people, not that I'm like very religious, I think I'm more spiritual than religious, but you'll see people in religion a lot of time, and that's their spirituality, but they get some kind of I guess outer body experience from, like I'm sure you've seen some guy pass through a person and the person shaking on the ground, and they had like a revelation. So I think that there's definitely the same kind of thing with psychedelics. And I think that to what V was saying earlier, some people feel it through psychedelics, some people see it through religion, some people maybe find that through art. It just really, I guess, is finding your kind of your way to I guess find and seek enlightenment, I guess would be the right term to say. Yeah, I think that's really what it is. So whatever brings people that sense of enlightenment, and that's what it is for some people. It's psilocybin. Like I can't remember exactly, but there's like a Buddhist statue, and it's in the Royal Museum in Ontario, in Toronto, and it's crazy that he has like all of these things. Like he has like all these like different articles on him. It's like a statue, and one of the things is a mushroom. He has one of the things he has on him is a mushroom. Like I can't remember what the statue's called, but it was just really interesting to me that this Buddhist statue from, I don't know, thousands of years ago, they have all of these kind of life teachers, and one of the things he has is a mushroom. So I think it's definitely spiritual because it has very similar effects and things that I've heard very religious people speak about. Then that's kind of, I think majority of people, when they think spirituality, they think religion, but there's obviously another level of spirituality. But I think that the same effects that religion has on people, and the enlightenment, and the never-ending quest to find God and praise God. I think there's the same thing that people feel around psychedelics. Like they've had such life-changing experiences that they start to, all hail psychedelics. Like they're gung-ho on it, so I think it's the same thing. It's definitely spiritual. Definitely spiritual.
Yeah, I like the way you said that. I wish we had a better connection with V, because guy's totally brilliant, and I love what the guy's talking about. And I another question I'm curious, and maybe we'll have some more. Maybe we can have more conversations later. We can get everybody back on. But one of the ideas I was thinking about was, we have all these neurotransmitters in our brain, and they all, you got serotonin and dopamine, and they all fulfill these different roles. In a theory that I have, it seems to me that psilocybin, might that be just an endogenous neurotransmitter that we haven't had? And because I get this feeling, and I've had other people tell me something similar, after taking a relatively large dose of psychedelics, it's like, oh, everything makes sense now. And there's this sense of well-being that tends to come the day after, this sense of clarity, this sense of like, okay, now I feel like I've figured some things out. And that almost seems to fulfill the role of a neurotransmitter. And when we talk about spirituality and religion, one thing to me that those things do for people is it grounds them. It makes people understand that there's something bigger than themselves. And it seems to me that, there's a lot of people that say, oh, when I take mushrooms, I feel like I'm talking to the planet. I feel like I'm talking to God. I feel like I'm talking to someone bigger than me. And it almost, this is probably going to sound a little bit crackpot, but it seems to me that you can understand the environment you're in when you are taking, especially mushrooms, and it's just so fantastic to me to learn about the way in which mushrooms move nutrients around roots, to the way in which they move energy from plant A to plant B. And like, why wouldn't it be the same thing that's happening in your brain structure that's happening in a root system? Like, what, and I know this is fantastical, but there's all kinds of literature written about this in different books. And I think that there's a real connection between the earth and ingesting mushrooms in your understanding of your environment. Does that sound too crazy, Anthony?
No, I think you're like right on, right? Like mycelium is like, it's the big connector, right? Like it's the big connector. And I think it's like the same way that, I think where's the biggest thing? I think it's in Oregon, like that biggest stuff, like life thing of mycelium. The same way that when you take psychedelics, like I don't know if you've seen the picture, but I think it might be the John Hopkins picture where they show like the activity in the brain, right? Like it just goes, it's like day and night. So there's definitely something there that's creating more kind of neurological kind of activity with the psychedelics. And I think you see that, and that it's definitely doing something neurologically and psychologically to people when you see the addiction, right? Like when people, when there's a lifetime alcoholic drinker or a lifetime cigarette smoker or an opioid addict even who does 1, 2, 3, 4 sessions of psychedelics, and it's like, not all of them maybe quit, but the success rate of the people who relapse is way, 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 way better than like the traditional approach. I think like for Alcohol Anonymous, I think they got like 5 or 7% success rate for people who go through that program. Whereas studies they've done with psilocybin, they've had after 24 months, 67% of the subjects don't go back to drinking alcohol. And like each month, it's like I think it was like month 3 was like 89%, and then it just slowly got a little lower. But the 24-month mark, 67% of the people cold turkey stop drinking alcohol. So there's definitely something that is doing to your brain receptors, kind of like hit that reset button. Like I don't need this substance. I like don't need this anymore. It's doing something. It's either resetting your brain or reprogramming your brain, or just doing something to give you that spiritual enlightenment to take a step back and really see what you're doing to yourself, like so I
pulled a look at it. I don't know, so this is going to be this way, I think.
Yeah, that's the exact picture. That's the one. So you can see like it's day and night, like after I think, and I believe it's from psilocybin, that one, and the brain activity and connectivity is crazy. I mean, you don't have to be. I think any 10-year-old kid can explain like these two pictures. Well, one has a lot more lines than the other, and you don't. It doesn't take much to know. Like, okay, well, this is definitely doing something.
Right. Yeah, and it if we were just spitballing here, like, how much more thoughts do you think you're having in one? Are you having more in the one with all the connections, or are you having more thoughts with the least connections? It seems to me that that's where the idea of synesthesia comes, when you're starting to process visual information in Broca's area. You're starting to process sounds in the visual cortex, and like what comes of that. Like, talk about imagination, talk about reinventing the world in a way that is original. Like, how can you create a better environment unless you begin to have different types of thoughts? And in some ways, I think that's exactly what's happening. And maybe I can ask you this: you've been all around the world, you've seen different cultures, you've played in different parts of the world. Is there something similar about the ideas of psychedelics in all the parts of the world that you've been to?
Similar about psychedelics. I think that I've rarely heard people talk about negative effects. I mean, I've heard people say they've had negative effects, but the similarity, I think, is just definitely in the spirituality. I think that's really the big similarity, right? Like people don't know what inside of them was awoken, but it awoke something to them. It gave them a new spark. I think that's kind of the similarity I've seen, like across the like everybody that I spoke to globally who's indulged or participated or taken psychedelics, or seen even people who haven't taken psychedelics and they've witnessed people taking it. They've seen the drastic change in their lives. So I think that's a big thing there.
Yeah, I think that it definitely has an ability to reach across borders, and it has an ability to reach across cultures, and an ability to reach across different sort of small-mindedness that people can hang on to, and develops an environment where people can grow and think and be free from a lot of constraints. And I think that's a big part of it, is just the constraints that most people are under. When we look at our lifestyle today, you wake up at 5, you make breakfast for your kids, or maybe people work out and they go to work, and then they, by the time they get home, some people are so burned out that they don't even have time to spend with their family. And it's, what kind of a life is that? And I think that the beginning to experiment with psychedelics is the beginning of you starting your own journey, figuring out, hey, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? What am I happy about? But
reevaluating.
Yeah, I'm having an absolute yes. Yeah, please.
Reevaluating what's important to you, and like what do you really want out of life? Do you want to work at, like, because a perfect example is like me, like, like I'm here. I could get a traditional kind of job and like make my mom happy, get all the bills paid on time and everything, but I'm just driven to, I want to live my own dream. I don't want to live somebody else's dream. And I think that's something that psychedelics kind of helped me realize. I don't And I think everybody wants to live their own dream. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But I think it's one thing to say it, and then another thing to manifest it and like take the necessary steps and willing to take the leap forward. And I think that's what a lot of people kind of just have to do. And I think a good way for psychedelics for people, I think, will be microdosing. For a lot of people who are not hip to it, not privy to it, I think don't go with your buddy who's been taking it forever and take 7 grams or 14 grams with him, because you'll never want to do it again, and you might even induce psychosis, right? So I think just for anybody, I would say start small, start low, and gradually go from there.
Yeah, James Fadiman wrote a great book called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. I'll put it in the show notes because people can go, and he actually did a really good survey from that book where you read the book and it just told you about microdosing, and then it offered you a website where you could go and plug in, hey, I'm taking, 1/8 of a gram every 3rd day. Here's what I found about it. Or some people are taking smaller doses. Some people are taking a little bit bigger doses. Some do it every day. But he broke it down onto his website, and you can see like this character arc of people's lives changing. And I think it's a great way for people who are curious to start. Maybe start by reading something. Maybe start by looking at what you want in your life or keeping a journal. But once you begin microdosing, I think the lights begin to kind of pop on for you. And you start to see a little bit, maybe a filter gets moved across your eyes and things become a little bit more clear. So I would agree that microdosing is a great way to begin your journey if it's something that you are curious about. And let me be clear, neither Anthony nor I are advocating for people to go out and do any sort of psychedelics or something like that. But if you want to do it and you want to investigate it, there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. The wrong way is to jump in and, hit up the strip club with 7 grams and just tear it up. Like, you definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But, there's no shame in grabbing a book and going online and doing some research and figuring out what's right for you. So
treat it like swimming. If you can't swim, you're not going to want to jump into the ocean.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
You don't want to. You want to go maybe into the kiddie pool and go from there. Where you're like knee high, and to take it from there. I don't think that. And I think that's what a lot of people do, right? They just want. I just want to find the shortcut, and I just want to get clarity on everything. I hear all this hype in the media, so right away, like, I don't have time for microdosing. I just want the ego death. What?
Yeah.
So that's, I think, and that's like, and it's just, I think just educating people over time, and that's kind of the big kind of missing key thing with the psilocybin. I think a lot of data is missing. People need to be educated. There's a lot of he say, she say. There's no real proof behind it, or nobody really knows. So there's still a lot to go. I think we're still in the infancy stage, and it's hard to go and tell people do this or do that or what to do. And so that's why, like I said, for us, we just focused on what we know, and that's like making like from the cannabis, we just transferred over, making compounds, pure compounds that people can dose accurately, ethically, and it's like there's just full level of transparency. So that's what we kind of wanted to bring to the industry, and grow with the industry and create a new standard. I think I don't see why you should microdose and not know the tryptamine content. Like, okay, you're taking 0.1 of this golden teacher, tryptamine content is 0.7 or 0.8%. It seems pretty simple to me. Or you're microdosing penis envy, and that one is 1.3%, and you're taking 0.1, or you're taking less than 0.1 because you want your dose to be the same as what you're taking with the golden teacher.
Yeah, I can't underscore that enough, Anthony. And I'm so stoked to talk to you and Dr. V. Like, in the world of microdosing, it's probably it's majority of guys like me that are like, okay, I'm going to take a quarter of this cap. What about this cap and this stem? The stem probably has a lot less than this cap over here, but just because it's the same size doesn't mean it's the same tryptamine content. I could be getting double the dose in this thing over here. So how do you manage what you don't measure? Like, you should really have to work with the ideas that Anthony and Dr. V are beginning to standardize like that. Like, why wouldn't it be the similar amount? Like, how else can you manage what you don't measure?
Yeah, and the other thing too is, like, I think is it niacin? There's like a filler that they put in a lot of the microdosing. So if you take too much of the niacin, maybe not for me, but if you have a little less melanin in your skin, you'll turn bloodshot red. Like I've seen people
totally
take too much and they just start turning red, like they have an allergic reaction, an overdose to it. So it's even that. Like, why can't it be complemented, like your microdose be complemented with other mushrooms ground up in there, like lion's mane and these kind of mushrooms as well, or just something that's not going to be toxic to you? Like, like, why does it have to be like, why are there always these shortcuts, even in cannabis? Like to V's point earlier with the vaporizers, a lot of people are taking the vapes and they're cutting it with these different oils and stuff, giving kids popcorn lungs and different artificial flavorings and all these things. I think that's the biggest thing. It's not even, it's just capitalism. There's no level there's no efficacy. There's no efficacy in what you're doing. Your only thing is profits, right? So if your only thing is profits right away, then you shouldn't be maybe making psilocybin for people. You shouldn't open up a dispensary or anything like that, selling psilocybin or growing psilocybin or producing it for anybody. If your only aspiration is profits, don't get me wrong, we're all in business to make money, but I'm putting people before profits here. Like I'm trying to just usher in a new era, right? Where people are like, okay, like when they go to buy your microdose from somebody, they're going to be, okay, well, they're more educated. What's the tryptamine content of what's in there? And if you can't tell that person, that consumer, then I would hope they would go and buy from another guy or somebody who can actually tell them what's in there, or just some level of standardization. It just seems a little bit too wild west. And I think that can have a lot of negative effects on the industry in this kind of infancy stage, right? Like if the right politician's kid goes out and takes psilocybin and gets wrecked, it'll never be legal in one country or a jurisdiction or a state or a province or somewhere, right? It just takes one bad apple to ruin it for everybody.
Right. Yeah, hopefully we find that kid and give him a good apple, because that could change it in that particular way too. I what, as you were talking about doses, what have you guys figured out at Entheogen Biotech? Like, what is a dose? Is it a standard dose, or have you guys figured out the dosing regimen? Is it does it come in a liquid? I know you guys have an NDA, you can't talk about it, but is it a liquid in a drop?
So we have liquid forms of psilocybin and psilocine that we've isolated. We've also just have like the regular dried mushrooms. We once we harvest them, we either freeze dry them right away, or we'll put them in a vacuum oven and dry them. So they're like not brown and like black like traditional mushrooms you get. It's like perfect white, looks clean and consistent. The powder that creates and how the mushrooms dry and form. As well as what other forms do we have it in? We have full fruit body. We have a liquid kind of driplet that we've discovered. We have that would be the concentrate, and that's it. Really, those are the two traditional ways. And then, as well as producing it in the bioreactor, but that's more about just growing in a sterile environment than anything. It's not really per se about the extraction qualities or extraction techniques. It's just sterile environment. But so we have the concentrates in driplets and droplets and powdered and grounded up mushrooms right now. And for the bioreactor to produce psilocybin, it's just a matter of the mycelium we bred and the hormones and enzymes that we feed it in the bioreactor itself. I'm not sure if you got a chance to look at the video. It's just a 2-minute video, but you can see the mycelium growing in there, and you can see like the enzymes and stuff we feed it. And that's kind of our unique, I think, advantage right now.
Yeah.
As well as our testing capabilities, because we developed new testing capabilities with HPLC machines and qNMR machines to test psilocybin, as well as at-home kit that you can test with, but it's only up to 2%. So that's something we're looking to bring to market. So what we're looking to really bring to market right away globally outside of Jamaica would be our test kits, and it's only up to 2% psilocybin, and spores. If we can, right now, as far as I see, I'm looking at all these mushroom banks, they're selling spores in liquid culture across international borders and everywhere. So I think it's a market that we can enter as well, and sell our spores with with the tryptamine content, so you know what you're getting in that spore when you purchase it. And then that's the spores are a little bit different than the liquid culture. Liquid culture is harder to produce but more consistent, whereas the spores will, I guess, after each flush it'll be kind of less and less and less potent. So that's something we'd have to kind of run maybe like 4 flushes and be like, okay, after 4th flush, this will be your tryptamine content. Whereas the liquid culture, that'll stay consistent for every run you do.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, because I think spores in the United States are legal. It's only the fruiting body that is illegal, which it's interesting to think about.
Most places, that's what's legal. Like, you can go any city right now, I'm sure in Canada or the States, and just type in mushrooms Colorado or mushrooms Denver, and there'll be a website, I'm sure. And they're selling spores, they're selling grow home kits, they're selling liquid culture, and some of them might even be selling like DMT vapes and dried mushrooms as well. Like, so it's the wild west out there, you know. So we're hoping to just bring a just a level of clarity for people, so it's not so just up in the air what you're taking. Like, I don't know anybody who likes to take that, like, do things like that. You know, you want to know what you're ingesting for the most part.
Yeah, I think it's revolutionary, the ability to understand the tryptamine content in there. Like, that's bringing clarity and bringing transparency to everybody around it. You know, whether you're the person taking it, whether you're the person administering it, and in some ways, it's making it a lot safer. You know, if you know exactly what you're administering, then I think that you're being responsible and you're looking out for everybody involved. I'm stoked for you guys, man. Thanks for doing it. It's a cool thing.
No, I appreciate it. And it's just, honestly, it was just a gap we saw that was missing. I was asking people, I was like, listen, like, you take one set of, I took 5 grams here and 5 grams there. This one's a dud, and this one I was on the moon. So, like, there's obviously something there wrong, and I think that's kind of how it started. And then as we started breeding everything, it was just like, how do we separate ourselves from the competition, right? Like, even if we can say, maybe we can't tell you that it has 1% tryptamine, but if we can tell you that it has 0.7 to 1%, like that range, that's even better than what's out there. There's not even most people are just going to give you throw a number at you and be like, yeah, man, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And if, you know, like you had brought up, you know, if someone's buying, let's say you buy from a certain guy, and 1 month you get, you know, albino penis envies here, and okay, I should take about 3 grams of this. And then, you know, next week you get another one, but that comes from another flush. That could be a complete different, even though it's the same sort of, it's different, man. The content has gone way down. That's a great point.
Yeah. So you'll need more, or you're going to need So it's just hard to, I think it's just education. People don't know about it. I think they're not privy to it. They're not hip to it. So I think, just like with cannabis, more and more people know. You'll get more and more people asking questions. More and more people asking, "Oh, is this an indica or a hybrid?" And then, you know, like, you'll get people going to mushroom dispensaries and be like, "Oh, like, how much psilocybin is in this?" Because, you know, like, I want the onset to be in 15 minutes or 20 minutes versus an hour.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's just a matter of educating people. Letting them. I don't even think most people know, like, how many compounds are in mushrooms, or know, like, what psilocybin is versus psilocybin, and, like, you know, just little things like that. They just know. I just want to get ripped.
Yeah, it's a great point. Anthony, as we're getting close to landing the plane here, man, have we? Is there anything else that we should cover that we haven't covered?
No, I mean, we've been talking a lot about a bunch of different things. I don't know. I mean, we're like Entheogen Biotech. We're here in Jamaica. We're a Canadian company, subsidiary, Canadian company with a Jamaican subsidiary where we do our operations. And we're wide open for collaborations, investments, and partnerships. And, you know, we're looking to collaborate and keep growing and make a difference. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. Like, for me, you may not know, but, like, my big thing for my cannabis company was, you know, people before profits. And I wanted to be like you're American, so like the Dunkin' Donuts. Like, I wanted to have that national approach. Like, you know, like, I think when you think when you're in America and you think, or if you're in Canada and you think, I want coffee, you're going to Tim Hortons. If you're in America and you want coffee, you're thinking Dunkin' Donuts. If you're in Jamaica and you ask for a cold beer, they're going to bring you a Red Stripe. So like, I want that to be the same principle, like for my cannabis company and for my psilocybin company. Like, you know, when a person wants a spliff or a joint, they're going to look for my cannabis company, which is called Herbs, which stands for Health, Education, and Research of Botanical Sciences. And for the mushroom thing side of it, we decided to go with the name Entheogen Biotech is like our kind of R&D kind of name. As far as commercializing and taking to market, and what we're going to be selling microdosing and full doses to consumers in Jamaica, is that company. We're going to call it Positive Mojo. So like plus sign Mojo.
Yeah.
That's it. And and then our slogan is, it's unique. V is actually the one who found it. So Junju is it's mold. It's like a colloquial term in Jamaica for mold. So like our slogan is going to be Junju equals positive mojo. So, and that's it. And yeah, man.
I love it.
Yeah. It's V. He was the one who looked it up. He's like, because like I was saying before, we went to St. Vincent's. My mom's from there, and they call mushrooms, because mushrooms in general in the Caribbean have a negative connotation. They don't eat them per se, like culturally. Like I said, Junju is like the word for mushrooms, and it's mold. That's what it means, mildew. In my mom's country, they call them Jumbi umbrellas, which Jumbi is a ghost and an umbrella, you know. So it's like they have negative connotations, right? Like it's mold, it's a ghost. It's like people don't want to take mushrooms because of the effects that it has on people, right? They know about it, and so I think that there's a little bit of a cultural barrier there for us. But I think it's just, again, just educating people, getting them hip to it. And Jamaica is a pretty trendy place. They follow trends and follow what's happening in the outside world. There's a Starbucks with a lineup out the door every day, which is blows my mind that people are spending $7-8 on coffee, when, you know, the minimum wage in Jamaica is maybe like $80 a week, $100 a week US, and you're willing to spend $6, $7, $8 and up on a coffee. But it happens, and I think they follow the trends of the world, right? Like a lot of people, even a lot of questions I've been asked about Jamaica is like the cannabis, like, aren't you scared of the guy selling weed on the street or this guy? But most Jamaicans, they want to do what they see happening in the US and abroad. They see people abroad going to dispensaries. We want to go to dispensaries too. Like, we don't want to buy it from the rum bar or the little Rasta man on the corner. We want to go in the dispensary, have that full experience, and do what we see people doing abroad. So I think that they'll come to it and become hip to it. And I think it's focusing on the kind of the generation that I think is most affected by mental health and mental illness, or kind of everybody who's on social media. So the young kids, right? Like anywhere from university kids all the way to like, let's say like 18, 19, to like 35 is kind of where we're looking to kind of change their minds in Jamaica and get them hipped and turned on to it. I think anybody who's maybe 50 and over, they're not going to be taking mushrooms, but maybe of Jamaican descent, don't get me wrong. I think people in North America are more educated, hip, privy to it, but it's slowly coming. And yeah, man, I look forward to everything that's to come. And yeah, I don't know. I think I said a lot. I've been talking a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good. I think you have an opportunity to take Jamaica from a place that maybe has been following trends to become a trendsetter. You know, and I love the idea of people first. It's something that I think runs deep through the psychedelic community. I think it's something that's positive, and I think talking to you and Dr. V today comes through in the words you guys are saying, the ideas that you have. I think you're building a better community using entheogens, and I'm stoked to talk to you. I'm stoked that people are out there like you and Dr. V doing these things, bringing awareness and bringing transparency to the tryptamine content. It's revolutionary, man. And I hope everybody that watches this or listens to this podcast is able to reach out and ask questions, or can go to you guys and collaborate or talk to you, because you guys are doing good stuff.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And yeah, anybody who wants to reach out, feel free. We'll general questions, collaborations. We're wide open, and I think I look forward to what we're going to be able to do in Jamaica. It's revolutionary. It's going to be changing it from I think right now I would say like it's medical tourism around the retreats and stuff like that to being just full on medical. Like, like we're respected in a medical aspect for producing psilocybin of said quality with said standards and, certain things. And I don't see why it can't happen. There's already been Canadian companies who've exported psilocybin from Jamaica to Canada for their studies or whatever they're trying to do. So it's not like we're trying to reinvent the wheel here. Yeah. It's doable, obtainable, and it's just a matter of time and the right people and partners in place. And I think we can do tremendously great things.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, before I let you go, one more time, where can people find you? And you got any gigs coming up?
No gigs coming up, but you can find me. You can find us entheogenbiotech.ca. You can find me on LinkedIn, Anthony Bailey. I look a little different. I have my long dreads, but I recently cut them. And you can find V online. I'm sure if you search just Anthony Bailey and Entheogen, you'll see we've got some articles out there. We've got videos on YouTube. Like, we're trying to make everything that we're doing pretty public, even around like the studies we want to conduct. Like the next one we're looking to do is a microdosing and alcohol study. Like, we want to record these people. We want to put it on YouTube. We want to make it viral. Like, I want to make people know what's going on, see what's going on. And because we can, like, we have the ability to do it because of the jurisdiction we're working and operating out of. We don't have to hide behind what we're doing. We don't need any government body to give us permission. We don't need anything. So yeah, I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, you should be. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for participating. Thanks for taking some time to listen to us. Especially thank you to Anthony and Dr. V for their hard work today. This podcast is an absolute blast. I had a great time talking to you guys. And that's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a fantastic day. Aloha. Anthony, hang on for 1 second. I'm going to shut it down, but I want to talk to you for a minute.
Yep.